Hello, my name is Allison Gordon Wright, and I am one of the immigration attorneys here at Villafranca Law. So, a question we get a lot is from folks who are looking to come to the United States to live with their partner who aren't sure whether they should apply for a fiance visa or a marriage visa, right? And they're a little bit confused about the difference between the two and which one is better or which one makes the most sense for their lives, right? So that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today about what are the differences between a fiance visa and a marriage-based, a spousal visa, if you will. Um, so the process is different to obtain each of those things, and the requirements are a little bit different. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Well, first things first, obviously, if you are already married, if you're already legally married to your US citizen spouse, you are not going to qualify for a fiance visa, right? A fiance visa is for individuals who are engaged to US citizens. And the marriage process we're talking about today is for people who are already married to US citizens. I should note there's also a process if you're married to a lawful permanent resident to obtain your residency, but that is not the focus of today's video, right? Today is I am in a relationship with a US citizen. We know we want to get married. Either, we're already engaged. Should we get married and apply for the marriage, go through the marriage process, or should we stay engaged and wait to get married and do the process, have me enter the United States as a fiance? So the two processes start very similarly. The first thing you have to do, whether you're wanting a fiance visa or you're wanting to go ahead and apply, for residency as a spouse of a U.S. citizen, the first step is you have to prove your relationship to that United States citizen. So you are going to file a petition with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. That is the agency here inside the United States, and they will want the U.S. citizen to file that petition asking for you, the individual who's outside the United States, in this case, to come to the United States as their fiance or their spouse. And in that case, you're presenting evidence that your relationship is legitimate. It's not fraudulent, right? The government wants to make sure that you guys really are in love and you really do want to spend your lives together here in the United States. And so that's the kind of evidence we're submitting, right? Photos of the two of you together, your love letters back and forth, your text messages, anything that shows you have a shared life and that your relationship is not for purposes of immigrating to the United States, right? That is not the reason you're going through this process, right? So once that petition is approved, there's different names and they slightly differ, but the first step for the two kinds of, whether you're a fiance or a U.S. citizen, those are very similar. The next step in the process that we're talking about today, you'll go to the consulate abroad there in your home country to go through step 2. It's called consular processing. So that happens, again, similar either way, but the difference is going to be what happens next, right? So if you are applying as a U.S. citizen spouse, you've already gotten married, you got the first part approved, now you're at the consulate, you get that part approved. Then when you enter the United States, you are entering with an immigrant visa. And so when you enter with an immigrant visa, you are actually entering as a lawful permanent resident of the United States. So after you enter, you'll get your green card and your social security number in the mail, and you have all of the rights and privileges as a lawful permanent resident, a green card holder, as it's often referred to, here in the United States. I will note there are some other steps that might have to happen in the future if your relationship is relatively new when you're entering. Your marriage is relatively a young marriage. You might get what's called a conditional residency, and there's something you have to do to get the full kind of 10-year green card, right? And then if you want to apply for citizenship, you might not be fully done. But for today's purposes, you're entering as a green card holder, and there's not an automatic next step, I should say, for you. Now, if you are engaged to a U.S. citizen and you went through the consulate and you enter the United States, there is an imminent next step when you enter the United States as a fiance of a U.S. citizen. So you're not yet married, no marriage certificate in hand. You are entering on what's called a K-1 visa. Now, when you enter on a K-1 visa, after you enter, you have 90 days to get married to that U.S. citizen spouse. So you'll have to get married within 90 days of entry, and then you'll go ahead and do a next step, right? So this is where the process differs. There's an extra step for fiancés of U.S. citizens. So it's once you're in the United States, you've gotten your visa approved, which is just a visa that lets you enter the United States, lets you come, get married within 90 days, and then go ahead and apply for your green card. You apply to adjust your status. So you are then seeking lawful permanent residence from within the United States. So one key difference for folks to know is that if you're entering as a spouse of a U.S. citizen after you've gone through the consulate, you are entering as a lawful permanent resident. If you are entering as a fiance of a U.S. citizen after you've gone through the consulate, you are just entering with the visa. You still have to marry that U.S. citizen, and you still have to apply for the green card. So there's an extra step. And of course, you have to, get married to that U.S. citizen. So with that, something I always tell, individuals that I meet with to think about is whether you want to be able to work as soon as you enter the United States. Because if you're entering as a spouse of a U.S. citizen, you're entering as a lawful permanent resident of the United States. As soon as you get here, you have full rights of a lawful permanent resident, right? So you're able to work in the United States and to travel, to leave as soon as you get here, right? So that can be really important to people. And so that's something you need to think about. When I enter, do I want to be able to work? Do I want that work authorization and to travel without issue as soon as I get to the United States? If so, that might tip you in favor of going through the marriage based route, right? Like basically the difference is get married before you start the process instead of in the middle of the process. Now, if that doesn't matter as much to you, maybe it makes more sense for you to enter on the fiance visa. It really just depends on the individual and your circumstances. So if you enter on the K-1, the fiance visa, and then you're applying from the green card within the United States, you can apply for a work and travel permit to get those things to be able to work and travel while you wait on the green card to be issued, while you wait on a decision on that adjustment of status application. So again, we've seen different things over the years, right? Sometimes people get those work and travel permits quickly. And so it doesn't make that much of a difference because they get here, they get married, they file their application, and then they get their work and travel permits and they're able to work and travel while they wait on that green card decision. But we've also seen times where, there were significant backlogs and delays, and it was quite some time before they got that work and travel permit, or maybe the green card was decided, before they ever got their work and travel permit that was supposed to be a stopgap measure, right, to serve them while they were waiting on the green card. Well, if that's the case, I always tell people be mentally prepared for that, right? Because we can't control how long it will take the government. And so if you're entering on a K-1 visa, you certainly have the right to apply for that work and travel permit while you wait on your adjustment of status decision, but be prepared for it to take a while. Be prepared to not work in the country while you're waiting on that decision, and to not leave, right? To not travel outside the United States while you're waiting. So that leads me to another factor that people often want to know. This is often, the first thing people want is, well, what's the fastest? Whatever's fastest is what we'll do. We know we want to be together. We know we want to live in the United States. And whichever will take the shortest amount of time is the route we will take. And I, of course, understand that. Unfortunately, the answer to that question changes, right? And it depends. And so that's something we'll want to talk with you about in a consultation so we can give you accurate, up to date information. Because right now, I recently had a client go through the K1 fiance route, and they were able to enter the United States relatively quickly. Let's see, it took, 4 months to get the first part approved, and then they were able to enter the United States 4 months later. And now they've applied for their adjustment of status, but they have their work permit, and so they're able to work here. So for immigration timeline, it's gone pretty quickly, and that's actually going much more quickly than our I-130s, which is the marriage-based cases right now. But that's right now, and that's, an anecdotal example, and that could also the consulate, right? The consulates abroad can factor into that. And so, the again, maybe the K1 is faster and gets you in the US sooner, but that's not always true. And so I highly suggest, if this is you, if you're in this situation, you're watching this video because you're like, yes, I want to move to the United States to live with my US citizen partner. We're not sure when we should get married, if I should come as a fiance, if I should come as a spouse. That's one of those things we'll want to talk about in the consultation is timing. What trends are we seeing in timing at the time you schedule your consultation with us? And we can also talk through various factors, right? Because there are all of the immigration law things that I would be more than willing to talk with you about. But there are also other life things, right? Like, do you want to have a really big wedding where you have a lot of say in planning that? Well, that might factor into things, because if you're entering on a fiance visa, and you want that to apply for that adjustment of status, you have to get married within 90 days. You don't have a ton of control of the timeline. Often clients are getting married at the courthouse, and maybe they'll have a celebration later on. But again, these are just life things to think about as well, right? What makes sense for your life. So again, these are all things we'll talk about in our consultation. We can talk about, while you wait on that first part of the petition, what does it look like to travel to the United States on a tourist visa, right? Or on ESTA, while you're engaged to your U.S. citizen spouse, or married, or U.S. citizen fiance, or married to your U.S. citizen spouse. These are all the things that we'll want to talk about so that you feel really confident in your options, and then in your rights, and all of that good stuff. So this is what we do. We live in this world. Immigration laws and policies are constantly changing, but it's our job to stay up to date on those changes. And so when we meet, we'll talk through all of this in more detail, make sure you feel really informed before you make the best decision for your life, your family, your future family. Thanks so much for watching today, and don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd be happy to meet with you.